Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Played with Meg and Mike. We just got out of Tribal Council, where our most recent player was voted out of the Tendoa tribe, and the fourth member of our jury, unfortunately for him, is Peter.
Hi, Peter.
So Peter, you were just telling us before the video here about today. So you want to say again kind of what happened and if you think that had an impact?
So, I mean, after the immunity challenge, I kind of forgot to play this weekend, or from like Thursday on to today, and then Chris texted me this morning, and I was like, oh crap, I didn't do anything. And then, as I start texting people this morning, different people are unavailable or not responding to my texts, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. And so that's okay. Yeah. It is what it is.
Did you get sorry, you can go ahead, Meg.
I was just wondering what kind of feathers you found with your daughter.
I think we found some woodpecker feathers. So the story about the feathers is a couple of times, during the game, I had to not chat with people because I was like just doing stuff with my family. And so one of the times I neglected scheming with Brian, and it was because my daughter wanted to go look for feathers around the neighborhood, and so we found some woodpecker feathers. I think that particular time, but just going back to the original question around, what happened this week. Also, like, my name's been on the block for a long time, and even as Chelsea got eliminated, from the game, she was saying, Chelsea spent probably a third of her whole video talking trash about me and about how I'm such a puppet master.
Some of the slides on her presentation. Do you have a rebuttal presentation to share with us tonight?
No, I don't. No, you saw my video. That's all I have. You saw my video.
I don't know if Meg did, but I'll send that to Meg. Yeah. It was pretty funny.
Oh, Meg, you gotta see
it.
Yeah, essentially, just for anybody who's watching, earlier in the game, John House made a series of videos where he was kneeling on his floor with a bunch of papers describing basically the layout of the whole game. And Peter did let's say, an homage to that today. And it was pretty funny. So Peter, one thing that came up, when we were talking in Tribal Council was just kind of that, almost like that work-life balance, right, with Survivor Hamilton. Yeah. You're somebody who takes that pretty seriously. Do you think that has the potential to have a negative impact in the game?
So, so that's a good question. So the first point that I'm going to make is you have you have an immunity challenge on Monday. You have Tribal Council on Wednesday. You have another immunity challenge on Thursday. You have Tribal Council again on Saturday. And so here I am spending my Saturday night. It's 9 o'clock, and I'm talking Survivor Hamilton strategy with you, right? And so in between all of that is texting with people about, who your target is, who your non-negotiables are, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, absolutely. It's, it's a big commitment. One of the first thoughts that I had going into the first Tribal Council after the merge was, oh my goodness. So, like, I had come from Kobara, where everything was easy. We won and we won and we won, and there was no issues. And then I went into Navala, and we kind of had our boys that we were working with, and everybody else got cleaned out of Navala except for the boys, and that was easy. And then we came to the merge, which is, I'll call that the playoffs. It's the playoffs of Survivor Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you're going to tribal council twice a week. And like, that's a lot of work. And so the first tribal council, I said to my wife, like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I'm just not going to win this game. And it is what it is. And we'll see how far it goes. But, you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work making it to the, you know, this leg of the race.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I'll try to get my video back. That once you get to the merge, the game really kicks up, and that can really have maybe a negative impact, or just end up being too much of a commitment for some people, which is completely fine. Do you think that there still could have been anything different that you could have done to avoid this outcome?
Yeah, I mean, after we had the immunity challenge, I could have called Paul, and I could have called Jordan, and I could have called Graham, and I could have called Brian, but like, I just didn't. And here we are.
Do you have any regrets about that, or are you fine?
No, I don't have regrets about that. I mean, it is what it is. Like, you know, this game is. So I started playing chess like maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, and when you're playing chess, there's moves that you can make where you trade pieces with the other player, and then there's moves that you make where you win a piece for free. And anytime you win a piece for free, you get this really good feeling of, you know, I just pulled this off, and you know, and you feel very clever. And, you know, over the course of the game, there's a couple of times you make a big push to make a big move, whether it's, you know, Silas early on, or later it's, you know, trying to figure out that Sharon vote, you know, and, you know, the people that come with you. And like this, it's a good feeling to try and, you know, kind of outsmart your opponents. And I kind of got billed at this as this like grand puppeteer and architect. You know, I think that was kind of a narrative. Meg, you said that I was a big name in the game. I don't actually know that was as deserved as it should have been. Like, early in the game, I got really excited about playing. And so for the first tribe, for Kobara, I bought a big strip of like fridge magnet, and on the fridge magnet, I cut it up into pieces, and I was like, I put different people's names on the fridge magnets, and I put them on my fridge, and then I started moving them around, and we just kept winning the challenges, and it was just like I was just all for nothing. And then by the time the merge rolled around, like, all of the fridge magnets from Kobara are just like sitting on my floor because my kids have taken them off the fridge. And, you know, I never made new magnets for Tendura. And it's just like, yeah, it's just like a little bit of, it's an endurance game, right? Like, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And coming out the gate, I think I did all right. And then just like I ran out of steam, and it's okay.
And that's not necessarily the first time that running out of steam has happened in this game for you.
Yeah, when Survivor Hamilton 2, you know, the game was playing out, and I was in a pretty good position in Survivor Hamilton 2. And Kyle knows this because he went back and he reread all of Survivor Hamilton and how everything played out. And so in Survivor Hamilton 2, I quit because there was a week during exams where I was just like, you know what, I just got to ace my exams, and then I quit the game, and that was that. And so like this story about priorities is not like, Mike's not going to be surprised. You know, some of the people who are playing the game are going to be like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But, you know, it is what it is. And for me, I want to do well in my work. I want to do well with my family. Actually, flip that over. I want to do well with my family. I want to do well with my work. I want to do well with my friends, and I want to have fun playing the game. And like that's my priorities.
You still did pretty well.
I know. Yeah, I still did better than John House.
We're all doing better than John House.
John House and I are really good friends in real life. I see those guys all the time. So that's why he's talking trash about me in the chats, and I'm talking trash about him and making videos.
Do you wish that, in hindsight, that Kobar would have lost more challenges, or that you your time on Tendua, you said Tendura, now I'm going to say that forever now, that the four of you weren't put together, and so like earlier in the game you would have been forced to work a little bit harder while you still had the energy?
No. For me, the best part of the game, and Meg, I know you were kind of chirping us for this before, being boring and like not good part of the game and all this kind of stuff. My favorite part of the game was connecting with so many of my friends on so much more of a regular basis. Like at the start of the game, when everyone's kind of asking everyone like, well, who do you know, who can you work with, and all this kind of stuff, like, James was the best man in my wedding. I was the MC at Dave Morris's wedding. Elliot and I were in each other's wedding parties. I've known Paul since, I want to say, second or third year university. Mike, I've known since we were 16 years old. Sharon, I went to church with, and I'm sorry I had to vote you out, Sharon. Who else?
Chris, Kyle.
I mean, yeah, but truthfully, like I don't know Kyle as well as I know all the other guys, right? John's in that same crew of guys. Graham was one of the LITs who was part of my small group at camp. Brian used to hang out at church at 97 Churchill, right? And so like, apologies to anyone that I haven't mentioned. Chelsea was in a high school production of Grease with my wife, right? Like, if you're playing the game, and I know so many people in the game. I have such deep connections with so many people in the game, and 1,000 apologies if I didn't mention you.
Yeah, that was a really good Oscar speech.
No, but like that was, for me, that was the most fun part of the game. Like Dave Morris and he's my neighbor. He lives 20 houses away from me. For the hot minute that he was still in the game, he and I used to go for we went for walks after this, but we'd go for a walk down the street and just like catch up and talk a little bit about Survivor, what's going on in his tribe, what's going on in my tribe, and like it was great.
That's definitely the thing that makes me the proudest of the game is that same sentiment that people say all the time, right? And Meg, you said the same thing about you and Stevie, right? Is when you played, like you guys had never been closer.
That is true. It was pretty crazy. And I chirp because I have nothing else going on. I just don't.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. Well, and like as a spectator, when it's boring and predictable, that's less fun. It's less fun than, and then when somebody goes like full Cowan and just like blows everything up, that's more exciting.
Yeah. So what do you think the next, if there's a possibility of there being a next explosion, what do you think it could be? Or do you think it's going to be boring and predictable from here on out?
It's a good question. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal that Chris Pittman played the idol on me. And like that blew up Kyle's game. I think that was a big deal. I think too, though, that the way that Ulu and the Hamiltons work together is going to be interesting. Just everybody's going to have to prioritize who they want to work with, and I would be very surprised if the Ulu crew doesn't do very well. They're gonna do very well.
Why do you think Chelsea and Cowan specifically targeted you so hard early in the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle. I mean, you saw my video, Kyle. I think so. I knew Kyle won a round of this game. I mean, I won a round of this game when we worked together at Workopolis, Mike.
Yeah,
which I didn't mention to anybody until now. And that was kind of an easier version of the game because, or maybe not. Who knows? Anyways, I don't want to discredit my own achievements. What was the question? I'm rambling a little bit.
Why Chelsea and Cowan? Because they're out, so I think I could talk about it. And you're out now too. Like they were gunning for you early. I think you were kind of returning the favor a little bit.
Yeah. So I think kind of what happened a little bit was, I made the mistake of talking about my fridge magnets to a couple of people, and I should have kept that to myself. And so I think, having those conversations put a little bit of a target on my back, and I think in Kyle's mind set me as a big threat. And I don't think Chelsea. I don't think it would have been on Chelsea's radar without that. I mean, from all the stuff that is being said at Tribal Council, obviously Chelsea and Kyle have been working pretty closely together throughout the game. That's not something that I would have foreseen early in the game when I was having conversations with Kyle about, which direction to go. And then, yeah, I would say that's probably why I got singled out. Like, I don't know where Cowan comes up with stuff like third. I don't know what his exact quote was, but like third biggest player in the game. To me, and I have one vote, except for Ben who has 2 votes, but everybody only has 1 vote, and can change who they're working with at any given point in time. And it is what it is.
So you said, one interesting thing is that you feel like, some of the target on you may just stem directly from Kyle. You think that he just sees another kind of smart intellectual player who's going to be a threat to him eventually?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think the other thing, I mean, when I gave Kyle the idol, quite frankly, he didn't need that idol at all. He had an idol. He had Sharon and Chelsea in his pocket. And so then I give Kyle the idol. He plays it and votes Cowan out. And then, I was chatting with him on a fairly regular basis at this point, and he asked me what he thought I should do next. And I kind of had this base assumption that, I'm helping Kyle out. We've been chatting pretty regularly, that after the merge, I'm going to be working with Kyle, and we're going to be helping each other out. And what happened? So then we merge, and Kyle starts sending direct messages to John, to Chris, to James, saying, just so you know, somebody that you're working with gave me the idol. And like all of those guys know that I gave Kyle the idol at this point, and they're all playing dumb. And he says, well, they're not, he's not being straight with somebody on your crew is not being straight with you. And from then on, I don't think I've spoken to Kyle, just because like I was pretty transparent with him, and shots fired. And I was very surprised when Dave came at me. And I know that, you know, Kyle was the one who sent Dave to come kind of undermine, you know, Chris. I know that.
And Dave was fighting for his life in the game.
So it was just, you know, kind of. What's that?
Sorry, as I was just adding, and Dave was fighting for his life too at that point in the game, so he had to do anything that he thought would stick.
Yeah, he had to do anything he thought would stick. I was surprised that he didn't play his idol. I mean, there was a lot of idols in the game that could have been played that didn't get played.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
When Chelsea was leaving, she was pushing the Peter has an idol narrative.
Yeah.
Did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, just wondering.
Although I have a funny screenshot to share, which was Mike. Can you show this? I'll put this in the chat window.
There should be a way for you to share it, actually, to present.
Anyways, long story short, when I voted, I sent Mike a text saying, "I play my idol, I protect myself," and Mike was like, "You don't have an idol," and I was like, "I know." And so no, I don't.
I had to be like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, I was sitting in my chair laughing to myself that Mike's like, "Oh crap, does Peter have an idol?"
That's a great story.
When you had that idol to give, so just so everybody knows, Peter won a reward challenge where it was an immunity idol, but he couldn't use it. He had to give it to another tribe to use at their tribal council. Did you consider pretty hard giving it to somebody on Ulu to strengthen a bond over there?
No, not at all. And the reason why I didn't was because at that point I had a pretty good relationship with Brian and Paul, and they had control of that tribe over there. And so if I was going to give it to Ruth or to Sasha, that was going to undermine those guys. And so could I have given it to Sasha? Yeah, I could have given it to Sasha. Then they're still outnumbered 3-2. And
Paul or Brian wouldn't.
So then what does that do for me? Because then Sasha's probably going to get voted out next, or Ruth is probably going to get voted out next. So then over in Kubara too, you know, after Elliot got voted out, Cowan calls me on the phone and is just rambling up a storm. And so I call Kyle and I say to him, you know, I want a rewards challenge. I can't play it in my own tribe. You know, can I give you an idol? And he's like, yeah, who do you want me to take out? And I say, Cowan. And he says, done. And, you know, there was never any condition, you know, I didn't give him any terms of like who he had to use it on. He asked me, you know, who should I use it on? And I said, Cowan. And then in the next vote, he said, what do you think I should do? And I said, Graham. And when Graham came back, I was a little bit disappointed. Sorry, Graham.
All of Exile Island was probably disappointed too, because he only spent like a day there. Yeah,
and well, I mean, yeah. So, anyways, it was. There was no strings attached, and I was also a little bit disappointed when I started to hear the narrative that Kyle was spinning of like, well, you know, German gave it to me and like I had to do all of these things for him, which like good on him for crafting that narrative.
Why do you think it basically seemed like he turned on you, right, when the merge hit? Why do you think that is? Just to stir things up, just to create chaos?
No. So when you think about, so at the start of the game, the number of people that you know and the number of people that you can influence is kind of the currency that you have behind yourself in the game, right? Like for a long time early in the game, I was pretty safe because in order to vote me out, you're going to have to, you're going to have to convince all of the people that I just listed at the start of the video to vote me out, or, you're unlikely to divide the tribe early in the game and say, let's get all of these people to vote Peter, or at least some of these people to vote Peter. And over the course of the game, just given the amount of work that I was putting into it, I was very selectively choosing relationships that I was going to invest in. I think there were some people who were just like chatting with everybody, but I was very selective about the relationships that I was investing in for the ones that I thought would eventually at a point, become valuable relationships in terms of swaying a vote, right? And so like the last vote, there's a couple of things that went my way, which I was kind of surprised actually the last vote I pulled off. And so, that was framed as like getting my minions to do my bidding, when like I don't actually think about it like that. Like the last vote, I actually thought I was sunk on the last vote until somebody came to me and said like, hey, German, let's do this. And it was not one of the boys. And so like, of course I'm going to go along with that. So, there was, I think the way that the narrative was spun was like I was this grand architect and puppeteer, and like everybody only has one vote. There is no grand architect and puppeteer, and if you can skirt trouble and manipulate people, then good for you. And I just kind of leaned on my relationships with people in the game, and it brought me further than 2/3 of the people in the game, and it wasn't going to take me past the next third of people. But on that note, I do want to say, Meg, you look like you have a question. Go for it.
I just have a thought, and I do have a question. So I feel like this whole theme of there being a grand architect and that somebody else, like the moves keep being made because they think somebody else is like a puppet master, but it's never the puppet masters that's getting voted out, to be honest. But I feel like that's different this year. I feel like last year it wasn't the same. Like that's a new feature of this season is conspiracy over who's holding control over the game, or maybe the illusion that there's like a couple big people that are controlling everything. Do you think that's
yeah, I think that changes at different intervals, right? Mm-hmm. Like early in the game, I held a lot more influence than I do now. At this point.
Well, yeah, you're not in the game anymore.
No, at this point I'm not in the game anymore. But even at the point of the merge, because like Kyle said, I didn't break votes with my boys even once, right? And so it's pretty obvious that I was gonna vote with them, and so that's gonna become a threat. And so early in the game, I think John House mentioned this in his video about short, medium, and long-term threats. And that's kind of how I viewed the early game. And later in the game, there's only immediate threats. And only one person wins immunity from the immunity challenges. So it's not like you can just coast. It's not like you win a challenge and then you coast, or you be a good team player and then you coast.
Do you remember, and this is just throwing it back a little bit, do you remember the last game in Fire and Ice when you guys were on the same tribe on Fuego and you had to make the decision to bolt because Meg was probably going to vote you out?
Yeah, I remember that. So what had happened last season was I felt like the tribe was in a really good spot, and I had, aligned with, I think at that point, Graham and Brian, and Chris on what we were going to do. And I was on vacation. And I remember this. I was on vacation. And I said to Chris, Chris, I'm going on vacation. Again, with the priorities, right? I'm going on vacation. I don't want to be on my phone all the time. I want to be with my family. And I want to enjoy this. So the way that it's all worked out is, we got to take somebody from like this side of the tribe. And then it's like voting day. And Chris texts me and he's like, "Yo, German, we're going to vote Graham out." Or something like, I don't know if it was Graham or if it was somebody else. My memory tells me it was Graham.
I think it was.
And I was like, no, we can't vote Graham out. We need Graham. and so that kind of bungling that kind of juncture in the tribe was what put me kind of on the kind of smaller half of the tribe. Yeah. And so then I got the opportunity to go over to the other tribe. And at that point, Elliot was posting comments as like everybody in the game. And I just kamikazed at Elliot, and I made this like Google Doc about like every transgression that he had ever made during the game, and sent that out to everybody. And it was kind of the equivalent of like my John video this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, did that play in at all to voting Silas out? That he voted you out last game. He's part of.
I didn't even remember that Silas voted me out last time. I just remembered that he had this reputation of, kind of throwing chaos into the game, sometimes for fun, right? And so, like at the start of this round, to I think pretty well everybody on Kobara sent a picture of like the Kobara tribe and all the faces and pictures with like a little X in front of their face. And my response to him was, "Haha, that's hilarious." And then I was like, "Let's vote Silas out."
Too early.
Yeah. Sorry, Silas.
That vote was Silas or James, and it was really touch and go for a little bit there. There was a few people that ended up swapping. Do you think the game would have been much different at this point if James had gone home then instead of Silas? Because then you probably still would have had 7 weeks off from that point on, or 7 votes off, and then James wouldn't have been in Navala, and maybe you would have had Silas or something different.
Yeah, it could have been different. I mean, there's a lot of different junctures where the game could have been very different. Like, say Elliot doesn't come back from the merge, and say like Dave comes back from the merge, or say Dave Morris comes back from the merge, or say Cowan comes back from the merge, right? Like Cowan just got backstabbed by Chelsea and Sharon and Kyle and Graham. Or not Graham, probably somebody else. I think Graham stuck with them. And so like say Cowan comes back, he would have been a big a presence in the game that would have changed things quite dramatically. So there's a lot of junctures in the game where you could say like, imagine it was different, imagine it was somebody else or whatever.
Who do you want to get voted out next?
Jordan, he's dead to me. Jordan, it turns out Jordan lives maybe a kilometer from my house, and maybe 3 weeks ago, he and I, maybe a month ago, Jordan and I were texting and we were like, "You just want to come over, have a beer?" And so I went over to Jordan's house. I rode my bike over to Jordan's house on, I want to say, a Friday or Saturday night. And then we hardly talked about Survivor at all. We were just kind of hanging out, and we just crushed like 3 liters of wine. And then, we're buddies now. And he came back to my house, and I made chicken wings and we had beers another day, and then I went to his house and we were both singing Carole King because he was playing Carole King on his record player, and so like we're buddies now. So that's great, and he betrayed my trust. So.
Oh wow, that's like the saddest story with the worst bromance I've ever heard.
I'll get over it.
Okay.
Who do you think's playing the best game this season and thus deserves to win in your estimation?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a couple of people. That's a tough question because like the people that I think are doing well, I don't want to put a target on their back. And so by calling somebody out as playing a good game, I feel like that puts a target on their back and could potentially change the game. And if I want them to do well, I'm not going to call them out.
Can you name a name?
But who you want to win? Who is there anyone you'd be happy if they won? You can name a couple names. You can name a couple people. You don't have to just focus on one.
Sure.
Would you be happy if Paul won, for example?
Mike, you're like, why are you putting words in my mouth?
Oh,
so
would you be mad if Paul won?
No, I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad if Paul won. Paul's in a bit of a spot because he doesn't have any he doesn't have any natural alliances who would be like with him until the end, and so he's in a bit of a tough spot in that respect. And so if he won, like that would be I mean, for anybody to win, that's a huge feat. But that means he wouldn't be coasting at all if Paul wins. Like there's no coasting. For me, like I know so many, I was all coasting, I was all coasting all game long. And so if Paul wins, that's no coasting whatsoever. To a lesser degree, I think Brian's in a similar state. He has Cox that he knows fairly well. One of his good friends, Silas, got voted out very early. I think he knows some people, but not kind of
the same way.
In the same way that I do. I would say, obviously I would want my buddies to do well. Obviously I would want my buddies to do well. And this is just kind of how I play. Anybody that I wasn't directly working with, like I didn't talk to them at all. And so like Sharon, who I've known for years, I think I exchanged like 3 text messages with her the whole game. And Sharon, I love you. I look forward to seeing you. But like people that I didn't work with, I didn't talk to. And she was very clearly working with Kyle at that point. And so I was just not going to trust anything that anybody who was working with Kyle was going to say. And so I just didn't message those people. And here I am.
Do you think that there's 2 types of players? So the ones that kind of want to do what you're doing, like get in a group and make a good plan and stick to it. And then there's other ones who are kind of wanting to create chaos, wanting to have fun and mix things up week to week, or is there more nuance than that?
So I think very early Silas had a very apt comment that there isn't, in the game, there isn't like clear sides, and that there's overlapping concentric circles of relationships, kind of like a Venn diagram, and some people fit into other people's sphere of influence. And as the game kind of goes down towards the end, everybody has their sphere of influence, and that's kind of the way that it works. And there's things you can do in the game to build your sphere of influence. Like Kyle is very good at building his sphere of influence. Like when Kyle went into Kobara, I was actually very surprised that he went into Kobara. I thought he was going to go into Ulu. That was I think what I said to him was like, that is not a lazy move. And that's a move that's going to require a lot of work. And it did require a lot of work. And, you know, it's, yeah. And so everybody has their strategy and the relationships that they're going to choose to invest in. And like, everybody has their own way of playing.
Sure, and the reason I asked that question is it seemed last game and this game that people tend to want to vote out wild cards, or the people who have a tendency to, or have the potential to stir things up week to week. Do you see that as well? That is like those are the people who are more likely just going to cause you problems down the road?
Yeah. So as somebody who likes to have some degree of control in life, you know, if somebody's going to be with you one week and not be with you the next week, that's not somebody that you want to have around, because you can't depend on them. And, you know, that makes playing with that person a lot more work. And it means you also have to invest in relationships for people who are going to vote against you. And like, I don't want to do that.
That makes sense. You know, when it came to this vote, or kind of this at the end of the game here, did you consider at all like working with like a Brian and a Paul or a Graham, and just like realizing that the four of you are just, it's going to be too much of a risk? Or was it just like the four of us till the end kind of thing?
So this morning at 11, I got a text from Chris saying, "Hey, it's tribal council today," and we had we had people swimming in our swimming pool at that point in time, and the people swimming in our swimming pool were here until, I want to say, 2:33, and so like by the time I could even try and play, like, it was done. It was just done.
Right.
And yeah, it was just done. There was nothing to do. I texted the only people that would work with me, and you know, what I got back was effectively like, "Hey, your name's up there," and you know, you don't have the votes to change it.
And did you get the patented Survivor Hamilton silent treatment on the day you're getting voted out, where everybody just stops talking to you? I guess you're talking to too many people anyway.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, yeah, but probably the time to talk to people wouldn't have been like right before the vote. It probably would have been like right after the immunity challenge. So,
right. Yeah,
and there was a number of people that kind of before the immunity challenge had expressed interest in working with me, but like it was too little, too late.
Fair enough. Is there anything that you would have done differently, looking back? I know it's still fresh, but you know, that you think would have gotten you further?
Well,
I don't just mean surviving. I don't just mean surviving this vote. I just mean kind of getting into a better position, moving into the top 10.
Yeah. So what I probably could have done earlier in the game, after the merge, was, you know, if I really wanted to, start working with, you know, just like a different crew of people. And, you know, it probably would have needed to, you would need to show that you're not working with your four oldest friends that you've known forever.
Yeah.
In some concrete way, like Kyle aptly mentioned in the video. Yeah, probably something like that. But also on the other side of that is like, you can just see the heavy sigh that's coming out of me, like even thinking about trying to wrangle some other angle. Right? Like and Mike, you know this as well as anybody, like what time was I coming in on like the immunity challenges? Like there were some community challenges that like I just totally missed.
At the end.
And then I would look at my phone and it was like 10 minutes later and I was like, well, what are you going to do?
Now that there's like less of a time commitment, do you think you're gonna still pay attention and like come to tribal councils, or do you think you're gonna?
Oh yeah. I might not come to the tribal council. I'll definitely watch the tribal councils. Like you know, posting them on YouTube is fantastic, and yeah, love it.
You know, one last question, or at least because I'm kind of running out, but. I asked Brian about this in tribal council, but you know, Kyle's one player who kind of likes to bring gamesmanship to the videos and likes to, you know, not necessarily portray a persona, but try and maybe get under people's skin or anything like that. Do you appreciate that, or do you kind of view that as something that's just not really necessary?
So there was a couple of times that he made comments to me. That he was trying to get under my skin, and I thought, you know what, like I just need to he's trying to get under your skin. This is part of the game that he's playing. And he said something to me about the effect of like, Chris is saying he's the president of the bastards, and I think what he was trying to do was make. I don't know what he was trying to do. Maybe he was trying to make me jealous of Chris or trying to sow dissension or what. And I mean, number one, that sounds like something Chris would say. Number two, even if he said it, like that doesn't really change anything. Number three, you know, here's a guy that at this point I know is telling other people things about me that is actively trying to sow strife. And so I was kind of the mind that like, you know what, I'm just not going to let this guy get to me. And, you know, I think Kyle, in a way, kind of set me up as his nemesis. Because like he's been coming after me for weeks. He sent Dave after me. You know, every week since the merge happened, he's come after me, or at least from what I hear, he's come after me. And, you know, I would want to work with someone that's helped me out in the past, but that's I think Kyle trying to distance himself from the boys and kind of create his own identity in the game, and like he's still in the game and I'm not, so good for him.
You know, and I will say we talked about this on the phone like a few weeks ago about that specifically when Kyle was trying to kind of go against you, like go from working together to go against you. And I was envisioning this great battle between these two players going after each other. And you basically did the most kind of mature thing where you just said, I'm just not going to let that happen. And I really appreciated that, because it was like, you're just not going to let Kyle, you know, get under your skin, or you're just going to say, no, I'm just not working against you. And I think that, you know, that was mature and it probably saved you a lot of time. But alternatively, he's, like you said, he's still in the game and you're not. And,
yeah,
you know, there's a consequence to that too.
Yeah. Well, also last week, you know, the people that I was working with, they asked me who I wanted to vote out. And, my first thought was Kyle. And then one of the people I was working with said, you know, he's probably going to play an idol. And then I said Sharon as kind of second guessing my instinct. And then he didn't play his idol. And I was kind of like, man, like I could have done it.
Yeah.
And we would have had it. And then who knows? Maybe at that point I'm not out this week, because he's the one that I think that's been pushing hard on me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Brian's nice to my face and is pushing me behind my back. But I get the sense more that Brian is hopping on board with somebody else's agenda, and I think that's my read on it. But at the end of the day, you know, there's 6 people at least that voted me out.
Right. Well, do you have anything else you kind of want to say to the people who are going to watch this video or anything at all?
Mike, we're lucky to have you as a friend, and thanks for putting all the work in, and you're the best.
That's nice.
That's super nice. And I'm so excited. I hope you can come to the barbecue.
Yeah.
We can definitely have enough people over here because we'll all be outside.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Well, I can't wait. And you know, as much as there's all this like gamesmanship, you know, I'm actually really looking forward to that, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the people that we played with, and you know, I get the sense that everybody that was part of the game, you know, and just it's a really weird shared experience that we all have, and we're part of each other's lives in kind of a funny time of history and a funny way of being part of each other's lives. And you know, it was weird, but it was awesome and it was fun, and you know, I'm signing off. So
aw, that's so cute. Before you go, let me ask you what the thing is. What's the COVID activity, movie, podcast, whatever that's got you through this? I know you're very busy, so maybe it's an activity you did with your kid. I don't know.
No more podcasts.
So after my kids go to bed, I like to woodwork in my garage, and so
oh my god, that's so cute.
I've made a couple of like yard Jenga sets or like decorative triangle shelves. What else have I made? That's what I made during COVID.
That's so cool. That's a great hobby.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and what you should be binging, Meg, is if you haven't already binged. That's a good question. I mean, I feel like Brooklyn Nine-Nine is like everybody's watched it all already, and it's just like a feel-good comedy that everything works out in the end and everything's fine and it's hilarious. And
in an alternative world where cops solve crimes and do what's best for everybody.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What a world we live in.
Sorry.
It's too real, Meg. It's too real.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't want to leave on that note. So give me one more.
The last thing that I'm going to leave you guys with is that. Sorry, Meg. I got nothing else. I was signed off. I was checked out.
That's okay. You really did a great job.
Well, thanks. And you know, for anybody that was on the wrong side of the numbers with the boys, you know, I'm sorry that you got a bad luck of the draw, and like that was just going to happen, and there was nothing you could do, and it's nothing about you. I'll see you at the barbecue and shake your hand.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for playing again. Like this, you've played a lot of these games. Like you played that one extra one at work, like you said, when we were working together at Workopolis, and so you've been through a lot. And so I'm happy to give you some time back to spend with your family and build stuff in your garage.
Yeah, a legend.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, Mike, you're the legend. All right. See you guys later. It's been a pleasure.
Peace out.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Have a great rest of the weekend. Bye.